What I've got here are the oil pump shaft and the distributor drive shaft from the 74 TR6. This engine is sitting in boxes, you know. So I wanted to use those parts so I can replicate the shaft for the distributor and use it to prime the oil system of the 70 TR6. This 3/8 broken ratchet extension was sitting in my toolbox for a long time, and I didn't want to throw it away because I knew that one day it was gonna come handy, and it really did. So I just cut a slot in one end and it worked perfectly fine to drive the oil pump. And after installing so carefully the distributor with all the relevant gaskets, gasket makers and stuff in my last video, here I am removing it again because I forgot I was gonna prime the engine. But anyways, now I had to remove it so I can remove the drive shaft for the distributor and drop my newly made tool for priming the engine. And this is how it works. The direction is counterclockwise. Then I covered the opening around the shaft with towel so I don't splash oil all over the place. And I used my air drill because the electric one, I would kill the battery right away. And I pulled out the line from the oil gauge to see when the oil was gonna start coming from it. But obviously I needed a third hand to hold the towel. Okay, this wasn't gonna work, so I installed the oil gauge to free up one of my hands, and then I was able to hold the towel with one of my hands and the drill with the other. So the oil started getting pressure right away, which was a good sign, but I kept running it for maybe 2 minutes so it primes the whole engine, and the pressure remained at 70, which was right where we wanted it. That was perfect, no matter how fast was the drill going. And I literally heard the oil traveling through the oil passages inside the engine. And if you listen carefully, you can hear it too. When I made sure the oil system was well primed, I installed back the distributor with a new gasket, and it was time to set up the ignition timing. There are degree marks on the front pulley of the crank from 24 degrees before top dead center to 24 after, and I used those to set the crank 12 degrees before top dead center of the first cylinder firing stroke. Then I installed the battery and I connected the negative to the engine block and the positive to the clip of my test light, which means that now we are looking for ground because the rear end of the test light is connected to positive and we're looking for negative, so the test light comes on. Which means that when I connect it to the lead for the points, when they're closed, I'm gonna have light, and when they're open, it's gonna come off. And now simply I had to position the distributor in position where the light is on, which means that the connecting points are closed, and slowly turn it clockwise, which simulates that the rotor is turning counterclockwise, which is the direction of rotation for it. So I turned the distributor slowly until the light came off. But I turned it too quickly, so I did it one more time. And where it came off, that was my correct ignition timing. Then I tightened the clamp under the distributor that was holding it in place, and the ignition timing was set. Next I installed the spark plugs and the distributor cap and wires, and I was basically ready with the engine. So let's crank it and see if it starts. I'm so excited. Obviously this guy has something else in mind. Let's see what he's gonna do. Looks like he wants to mount those pedals there, but there's nothing to hold them. Unless he finds something on the scrap pile, but I doubt it. What? Look at that. Fixed perfectly, wow. And how is he gonna attach the pedals to that? Really? That's gonna be too flimsy. It's not gonna hold that there. Huh. Seriously? I see where is he going. He doesn't just want to start the engine, he wants to drive that thing. Told you it was gonna shake too much. Or maybe not. Okay, good, but how about the steering? Oh, he planned everything? Is he gonna leave it hanging in the air? Exactly, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, but the joint is shaking now. That's not gonna work. Unless he just welds the steering rod to the mount, right? Hey, I was just joking. That's clever. Okay, I give up. You know how I was saying that I never find time to build a mount for the master cylinders and for the steering wheel? Well, 2 hours. That's what we're talking about. I never found time. Now I found the time. See? It wasn't that difficult after all. Even the gas pedal over there, everything is attached. So now I just have to bleed the brakes and the clutch, and of course to start the engine, and then we will take it for a test drive and see how it drives without the body. So for the brakes I started from the rear right wheel because it's the furthest from the master cylinder. I put the hose on the bleeder, opened it, put the other end of the hose in a bottle and left the gravity do its job. And in the meantime I started dealing with the clutch, where I did exactly the same thing. I just opened the bleeder and waited for the fluid to start coming out and push all the air out. And then to make it more interesting I put my hand right in front of the camera. But anyways, that worked well and the pedal became really hard, but for some reason the rod was moving just maybe half an inch back and forth. Let me push it back. Yeah, smart. Got showered with brake fluid from the cylinder. So it turns out that the piston of the slave cylinder was too far out and there was nothing to push it back. And there was nothing to push it back because the rod was too short. And why was it too short? This cylinder, the slave cylinder, is mounted on the wrong side of the plate. It needs to be on this side of the plate. So then the cylinder, then the rod is gonna have a lot more travel, like 3/4 of an inch more travel. So that's the problem, and now I realize why John was concerned about the clutch and the transmission. Okay, so I'm gonna have to disassemble this and put it on the other side of the plate, and then I think everything is gonna be fine. And now we have clutch. And back to the brakes, where we have a little problem. Obviously the acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared, which is the gravity of the Earth, known as G, is not enough to drag the brake fluid down the brake lines. So until we find a way to go to Jupiter to bleed our brakes using the gravity method, I'm gonna stick to the old methods where I have to pump the air out myself. And when I say myself, I mean myself. It's nice to have access to the rear wheel bleeders while sitting on the driver's seat, huh? And finally we are at a point where we can try to start the engine and eventually drive the thing. Okay, so we are ready for start. We have a seat, very well fastened, strapped. We have a steering wheel. We have oil gauge, oil pressure gauge. We have pedals. We have a push start button. We have battery, and we have a gas tank, and we have an engine. And we have 4 wheels and transmission. What else do we need? Nothing, right? We just need to start the engine. So some gas in the tank, some gas in the carbs, and let's crank it. It wants to start. And the choke cable is not connected. Yay! It runs. The oil pressure looks good. I checked for leaks around the fuel pump. Everything was fine. But exactly as before, it's hard to start. Once it starts, it runs. Not very smooth, but at least runs. But something is wrong with this cam. You remember I don't have the spec for this cam, and I timed it with the valves equally open at top dead center, but this might not be right. So when it started again, I decided to let it run for a while until it warms up and see if it was gonna run better. Here I'm holding the choke closed. Now it's warmed up already. The thermostat is open. And it is -6 outside, so I think that's the perfect time to take it out for a ride. Okay, first ride. See, it smokes a little bit. It's cold outside also, but it does smoke. So let's see. Oops. And I can hear the valves clicking already. So we're gone. Backfires a little. And I'm coming back any moment now. I said I'm coming back. I'm coming back. Ah. What happened? Where's the thing? Oh, I see. Didn't go too far. Okay, you killed the battery. But no problem, we're gonna boost it. And don't be fooled by the sun, it's -6 outside. My hands are frozen here in this moment. I don't even feel them. Another problem is that the carbs don't have the air cleaners on them, so that's also creating issues. The valves I can hear need adjustment already. And there are many issues. So needs more work. I didn't realize that the back was so light, so I started throwing rocks at my own car. That was fine. So I took it back, and I think what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna open the timing cover. I'm gonna put the degree wheel again, and I'm gonna try to find out as many as possible of the parameters of this camshaft, like overlap and duration of the intake and exhaust. And we'll see, because sometimes the overlap is not symmetrical. On the performance camshafts, for example, sometimes the intake opens much earlier before top dead center than the exhaust closes after top dead center. So then the point of equally open valves is not the top dead center of the crankshaft. So my timing might be wrong, but without the spec I can't really tell. Ooh, that was cold. My hands froze. So what happened was I shoved the hose in the jug too deep, and it made a loop, and it came back up and came out of the gas. So I didn't realize that, and by the time I tried to start it, I killed the battery. Also, this nut here fell, the nut on the throttle lever, so I lost the throttle at some point. So many issues for such a short drive. Anyways, I'm not gonna try that again before it becomes at least 4 or 5 degrees outside, because I literally froze. My hands are... Oof, I don't feel my hands.